Every brother I've lost was in a moment when we were not getting on. And so I have to live with that. Yeah. I'm the last man standing.
You all right?
Yeah.
What if the most beautiful family harmony in music history was a complete illusion? At 79, Barry Gibb finally admitted a dark reality about his twin, Robin, that shatters decades of Hollywood nostalgia. They made billions singing about love while living in a cold world of bitter rivalry. Now, the final surviving brother is haunted by a devastating permanent regret that changes the Bee Gees' legacy forever. Have you ever thought about what it is like to be the very last person alive who knows the secrets behind some of the biggest songs in history? Well, that's everyday life for Barry Gibb. The 79-year-old is the only and final surviving member of the Bee Gees. With all his brothers gone, that leaves him with the old master tapes, the memories, and a heavy truth he kept bottled up for decades. For years, the Bee Gees put up a show. When Barry, Robin, and Maurice sang together, their voices blended so perfectly. Their fans swore the brothers could read each other's minds, and it was the only explanation as to why they were able to perform so beautifully. But their beautiful music hid a messy reality. Behind the scenes, the brothers struggled to connect. The flawless harmony they created on stage actually masked a deep emotional distance that lasted a lifetime. Looking closely at their old interview tapes, there's no doubt that what millions of viewers suspected for years was true. There was a weird, icy space between Barry and his twin brother Robin. They rarely stood close together when they weren't performing, and they almost never made eye contact during interviews. The public saw a tight-knit group of loving brothers, but the reality was much colder. Outside of the recording studio, they were essentially business partners who lived completely separate lives. Now, near the end of his journey, Barry is finally opening up about what went wrong between them. He made a heartbreaking confession about Robin that completely changes how we see their entire legacy. But to truly understand why his admission is so shocking, we need to see how two brothers could write the most famous love songs in the world while remaining total strangers. The illusion of perfect harmony. The Bee Gees became a global phenomenon in no time, selling more than 220 million records. They created a unique sound that defined an entire era of pop culture. To the rest of the world, their musical bond seemed completely unbreakable because they were brothers. When they sang, it sounded like a single soul split among three men. But it wasn't always like that away from the studio. These men were at loggerheads from intense egos, conflicting artistic visions, and deep resentments. Fortunately for them, their team worked around the clock to hide these fights from the public. For decades, television interviews showed a tightly knit group of brothers who laughed and finished each other's sentences. This happy family image was a brilliant front, fiercely protected by their management. If you knew where to look, the warning signs were always visible. They were trapped in a cycle of silent competition, performing as a group while drifting further apart as brothers. The world assumed this friction was caused by their sudden wealth and fame. But the truth is, this silent war began when they were just penniless kids running from the law. Before they attained global fame, the Gibb family lived in Manchester, England, just after World War II had ended, so money was incredibly tight. Their parents were musically gifted people, yet they were completely overwhelmed trying to raise 5 children during a time of extreme financial distress. The household was chaotic, and the pressure to survive was constant. In the middle of this stressful period, young Robin developed a dangerous habit. He became known as a neighborhood pyromaniac. Robin had a terrifying fixation with playing with matches and setting fire to local billboards. This juvenile delinquency quickly caught the attention of local authorities, causing major panic within the family. Things got so bad that Manchester local police officers asked the Gibb family to relocate. This ultimatum prompted a sudden, life-changing move for all of them. In 1958, the Gibbs packed up their few belongings and moved to Redcliffe, Australia, looking for a fresh start. Getting into a new country seemed better, but it didn't help financially. To help the family put food on the table, the young brothers turned to their voices. They began singing at local racetracks, performing between races while spectators paid little money for it. On top of that, they also chased every talent show available just to survive. Soon, they formed a group with Barry, the eldest, taking the lead. In no time, they were known around their small community and then the whole of Australia. But in order to get the kind of success they were looking for, they had to make a big move to England, where a massive breakthrough hit would accidentally trigger the first explosive destruction of the band. The 1969 split. When the brothers boarded a ship to head back to England in early 1967, they were broke but determined. Before leaving Australia, their father had sent a package of their demo tapes to NEMS, a massive entertainment company in London run by the Beatles' manager Brian Epstein. By a stroke of absolute luck, those tapes landed on the desk of Robert Stigwood, who was director at the company. He was an ambitious executive looking for the next big thing, and those demo recordings caught his attention. The moment the Gibbs stepped off the boat in England, Stigwood brought them in for an audition and signed them on the spot. Under Stigwood's management, their lives moved at lightning speed. He invested heavily into promoting and got them into top recording studios. Almost instantly, the Bee Gees scored massive hits like New York Mining Disaster 1941. They went from being completely penniless to living a glamorous superstar lifestyle, pulling in checks they had never imagined. This sudden rise to fame was the fuel that propelled the hidden rivalries between the brothers. The breaking point arrived in 1969, and it happened because of a single piece of vinyl. Robin had written a song called Lamplight, and he thought it was going to be the biggest hit ever. But Barry also wrote a different song, 1st of May, and felt it was going to be a hit as well. When Stigwood and Barry chose Barry's song as the main single, Robin felt completely pushed aside. For a proud 19-year-old, this decision was a public humiliation. Feeling betrayed, Robin walked away from his brothers to start off his solo career. Instead of sitting down to talk, Barry and Robin used the British music press to wage war. They traded bitter insults through magazine headlines just to get at Robin. But Robin didn't really care about all of that. Fortunately for him, he scored a quick hit with Saved by the Bell, but his solo success failed to heal his insecurities. By late 1970, the separation became too painful. They staged a big public reunion, shook hands for the cameras, and admitted they needed each other musically. They fixed the business, but left their deep emotional wounds completely untouched. They patched up the band for the sake of survival. But a massive musical revolution in the mid-1970s was about to hand Barry a weapon that would leave Robin feeling completely overshadowed. Robin's growing insecurity. By 1974, the reunited group found their career stalling, forcing them to make a high-stakes move to Miami, Florida. It was there that they teamed up with legendary music producer Arif Mardin, who completely stripped away their style of music. Mardin wanted a groovy rhythm and soul sound that could take them from outdated pop stars to hitmakers. After a long year of getting into a different country, style of music and sound, it was a recording session for an accidental song called Nights on Broadway that changed their lives forever. Mardin asked if anyone could sing in a high note to add excitement to the track. and Barry unleashed a soaring, supernatural falsetto voice that shocked everyone in the room. This unexpected vocal discovery instantly redefined their entire musical direction. By 1977, that new sound exploded globally with the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack. The album became a historic cultural phenomenon, pushing Barry's unique high register to the absolute center of pop music. The media and the fans suddenly viewed Barry as not only the leader of the group, but also the face and voice of the Bee Gees. This massive success took a heavy psychological toll on Robin. His signature emotional vibrato, which had powered their greatest early hits, was suddenly relegated to simple background harmonies. He was making millions of dollars, but his individual artistic identity was completely swallowed by his older brother's massive shadow. During their peak stadium tours of the late 70s, Robin developed a strict defense mechanism to survive the pressure. He began to mentally and physically detach himself from the group. He became a ghost within his own band, singing his parts flawlessly on stage while retreating into absolute isolation the second the lights went down. To keep this fragile, high-pressure empire from collapsing, the brothers had to implement a strict clinical set of unspoken rules behind closed doors, and Robin took them a little too seriously. As their fame reached an unbelievable peak, the inner circle felt less like a family. To prevent Barry from taking complete control of the group, every single decision, from picking which songs went on an album to choosing which track became a radio single, was decided by a strict majority vote. This approach kept Barry from becoming a tyrant, yet it turned their creative choices into a series of political maneuvers. Robin used these rules as a shield to handle his deep anxieties. He developed a massive obsession with tracking music charts and radio play data around the world. He spent hours studying numbers from different countries, constantly seeking outside proof to validate his worth. This intense pressure turned their songwriting sessions into a frantic, unspoken race. The brothers also had to agree that whoever came up with the core melody or the initial lyric of a song automatically won the right to sing the lead vocal. The only reason this arrangement went on for long was because of Maurice Gibb. As the fraternal twin, Maurice was the only reason the band was still in one piece. He selflessly put his own ego aside to step into the middle of the deep-seated battles between Barry and Robin, with strict rules in place. He was the only thing that kept the Bee Gees functioning flawlessly for decades, and it relied heavily on Maurice to hold the center. But when tragedy struck without warning, the anchor was violently ripped away. The shocking double blow. The family had already faced a massive blow years earlier. In 1988, their youngest brother, Andy Gibb, died at only 30 years old from a heart condition. After years of severe substance addiction, and despite his brothers repeatedly paying for rehab and trying to help him restart his career, his body finally gave out. His sudden loss left Barry, Robin, and Maurice carrying a heavy weight of survivor's guilt, constantly wondering if they could have done more to save their little brother. Still, the three remaining brothers held on to their strict internal system, and they relied on Maurice to keep the peace. But the fragile safety net vanished in 2003 during another sudden health crisis. Maurice had been rushed to the hospital with a twisted intestine and suffered a fatal cardiac arrest, which eventually led to his death. The news caught Barry and Robin completely off guard and soon destabilized the band. Without their mediator, Barry declared the Bee Gees dead, vowing never to perform under that name again. The tragedy pushed the two surviving brothers down completely opposite paths of grief. Barry fell into a heavy, paralyzing depression. He spent months on his couch, unable to find the energy to create music or face the public. As for Robin, he did completely the opposite. He tried to outrun his grief by immediately booking solo tours across the world. This difference in coping styles triggered a bitter feud between the two. While on tour, Robin started performing classic Bee Gees tracks by himself, even taking over Barry's signature high falsetto leads. Watching from afar, Barry felt nothing but betrayal. To him, those vocal arrangements were sacred family property, and seeing Robin sing them alone was salt to his injuries. With their mediator 6 feet under and their shared legacy now turned into a battlefield, the two remaining brothers completely stopped speaking, entering a dark era of absolute silence. The silence after Morris's passing. For several years, Barry and Robin completely cut off all direct communication. Decades of hidden sibling rivalry combined with the trauma of losing 2 brothers created a massive emotional gap between them. Instead of leaning on each other to heal, they used their wounded pride as armor. They built an impenetrable wall of silence, leaving them totally isolated from one another. While Barry stayed isolated in his Miami mansion, Robin launched a relentless solo crusade. He toured constantly, traveling to distant countries to perform the old hits by himself. He was still chasing the individual validation and recognition he felt he was denied during the height of his career. He needed to prove to the world, and perhaps to himself, that his voice could fill arenas without his older brother taking the lead. To make matters worse, Robin was dealing with a highly chaotic personal life back home in England. He lived an unconventional lifestyle that included an open marriage and a highly publicized relationship with his housekeeper, which resulted in a child. These distractions and media scandals consumed his energy. This also kept him further from Barry, who lived a much more conventional, quiet, personal life in Florida. Some might argue that the real tragedy after the loss of their brothers during this time was the loss of precious time. Here were 2 aging pop icons, wealthy beyond belief and living a few hours apart from each other. Yet they remained completely trapped by their own stubbornness. Neither brother possessed the emotional capability to talk things out. The silence dragged on for years, until destiny cruelly forced Barry's hand when Robin was suddenly hit with a terrifying terminal ailment. Robin had really hit it off with his solo career. Just 1 month after the passing of his twin brother, he released a solo album and immediately launched a relentless world tour throughout 2004, hitting Germany, Russia, and Asia. For 7 years, that frantic pace kept Robin moving, but his body was quietly keeping score. While preparing for more performances, he was suddenly rushed to the hospital with crippling abdominal pain. It was there that the doctors discovered a tumor, and he was eventually diagnosed with colorectal cancer, which had spread to his liver. Because of how private he is, Robin hid the medical news from the public and his family for months. He refused to let the sickness slow him down, displaying an intense determination to keep working through blinding physical pain. He poured his remaining strength into composing a massive classical album called The Titanic Requiem alongside his son. As he wrote the orchestra parts, his physical frame withered away to a shadow, yet he kept pushing forward in the studio. By April 2012, Robin became too weak to attend the Grand London premiere of his classical masterpiece. He caught pneumonia, fell into a deep coma, and finally passed away on May 20th, 2012. This sudden medical emergency completely shattered the long era of absolute silence between the remaining brothers. His passing left Barry completely alone as the last surviving member of the 4 Gibb brothers. The historic trio that had defined a generation of pop music was officially gone. The world lowered its flags for a legendary music icon, but for Barry, the true internal torment was only just beginning, eventually leading to an admission he would finally make at 79 years old. The heartbreaking admission. Now, the only surviving member of the family and the Gibbs family, Barry has had to go through a roller coaster of emotions, which was unveiled in January 2021. During a remarkably candid interview, he confessed that even though he and Robin were brothers, they were never real friends. Barry has to live with the haunting reality that every single brother he lost passed away during a period when they were not in speaking terms or were just deeply estranged. Andy, Maurice, and Robin all passed before a true reconciliation could happen, leaving Barry to carry the heavy weight of those unresolved arguments forever. This confession directly validated what fans had suspected for decades. Barry explicitly detailed this heavy, ghostly sensation of performing solo during an interview with the Sun newspaper. He explained that performing on stage by himself had been incredibly hard because he feels like his brothers are right next to him, and then realizes that he's all alone performing on stage, which is something he has had to get used to. To cope with this overwhelming loneliness, Barry launched the Mythology Tour after Robin's passing. He designed the entire show around massive video screens displaying archival footage of his brothers singing. He has even shared that his brothers appear to him constantly when he closes his eyes, noting that he sees Robin a lot in his dreams. With his brothers gone, he has decided to turn to the next generation of the Bee Gees. He, alongside his son, Stephen Gibb, and Maurice's daughter, Samantha Gibb, has decided to continue the family legacy. Even with family by his side, Barry constantly battles intense survival guilt, questioning why he was the one destined to outlive all of his younger siblings. He also mentioned that his wife, Linda, has helped him out of his deep depression in order to honor his family through music. This push led to a late career jump in 2021 called Greenfields, where Barry reimagined classic Bee Gees hits alongside country legends. The project proved that the tragic cost of their world-altering genius was immense, but the music remains timeless. Regardless, Barry Gibb's admission proves that even the most perfect harmony can hide a world of unspoken pain. What is your favorite Bee Gees memory? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.